We'll focus function in Python. We already aware about what is a function, right? How we can define the function. If someone asks you the function in any programming language, how you define it?
So list tuple.
Yeah, that is a built-in, but in general, the definition of functions, we have seen in C or in Python, or sorry, in Java, we have seen the function topic. What is use of function? Yes, the
To
function is
perform
basically, yeah, perform the specific task and which can be
any
used repeatedly. Yeah, the function is a block of code which can be used repeatedly. Okay, we can use it repeated, and that is also whenever we need it. Whenever we need that, we can make a use of that. So this is you can say that definitions needed. Okay. So basically the feature of reusability of a code. Okay. Reusability. You can reuse that code. Reusability of code is nothing but a functions. So this is we have already done in Java or in C. Mostly the similar syntax we have. So have you remembered if we told you to write some function to define some message in C or function, how you can define the functions?
add or remove function.
Yeah, that is you are talking about, which is built-in ones. How we can define our own. Suppose if I told you to define a function to display message, define a function to display message, then how you can define this function? In any programming language, I'm not particularly talking about the Pythons. We are going to see the syntax in Pythons. Display message. So how we can define function? Any programming language you already done in the C also, in the Java also. If you remember any syntax, it become easy to compare. So that's what I'm telling, like how can define the function in this.
In Python, it is print.
That is also for built-in function. I'm saying the user-defined function.
Mm,
Yeah, so you have confused, like I am saying that displaying message. That doesn't mean that exactly displaying message. Means user-defined functions. For example, you can define the function called message, and after calling that function, it will display the any message that we have defined in that functions. So have you remembered any syntax, something else? Okay, no worries. So at least you know that the function means something which have a block of code. We can use the repeated it lines
easy.
whenever needed, right? So if you remember the
Yes.
code, like we have write always like a void, we have a write, then something function called a message,
Yes.
and the round brackets. So the biggest identity for the function is a round brackets. Remember that. Okay. The function identified by a round bracket in any programming language. So you can use a Python, you can use a Java, C, C++, any language. The identity of the function is a round bracket. So this is syntax for defining a function to display message. So here you can use any kind of syntax. If you are using a Java, then you can write system.out.println. If you are using the C plus C language, then you can go for the printf, or else if you are using, you can say that C plus plus, then you can use a C out here. Okay. This syntax is suitable for all the ways. Java, C language, or C++. So this is a way of defining a function in C, C++, or Java. Void, function name, round bracket, opening bracket, and the closing brackets. It is defining a function. Define a function like this. You can define a function. Now, how to call that function? To call these functions, like, or the function name is here. What is the function name? Message.
Yes.
Okay, whichever the word is comes within round brackets, so that is kind of function. Okay, so while defining, we're using the void function name, round bracket, opening bracket, closing bracket. Now, if you want to call that function, so that time you can use the function names and the round bracket. Okay, suppose I want to call this function to call function. How we can call that functions? Function name is what? MSG, round brackets. That's all. So after calling this function, whatever we have written within this brackets, that will be get displayed. And the number of time I can call this function so that this code can be repeated again and again. If there is a no function, then every time I need to write this code repeated. So instead of writing code again and again, just simply define all that code within that function block and simply call the functions. So this is how the function is a block of code which can be used repeatedly whenever needed. So generally this is a syntax in any programming language, but we are specifically focusing on the Pythons. So now we'll go with the Python. Okay, in Python. So what is syntax in Python? So the concept remains same, only the syntax will be get changes. Similar thing if you want to define in the function, there is a def keyword is used. Def, DEF. It may be a short form of definitions or define anything. But def is a keyword which is used for defining function. Then the function names, the round brackets. This will remain same. But in Python, we have already know the one of the concept called indentations. That means in Python, there is no opening and closing brackets. We already done in while studying the if, right? So this is means opening and the closing brackets. So until and unless you are in the same intended lines, you are in within that functions. So in Python, we use the print for anything. So this is how you can define the function in the Python. Now how to call it? The calling process will be remain since to call function in Python. So you can call what the function name is here, MSG. The calling process will be remain same for the both like other programming language as well as Python programming. You got it? The syntax for defining function in Python.
Yes.
The depth is very important. Right? Unless and until you understand the function, you're not going to understand the modules. And in Python's, everything is based on the models. So this is the first part. Yes, simple syntax, depth, function names. There is no opening and closing bracket. Instead of that, we are using colons. And after the colons, whenever you hit the enter, that indentation must be get set. Okay, let's see now the practically, whichever we have defined how to use that. So for that, you can simply go with an ideally the file new. Okay. A folder. Sorry, folder name is py function. def. To define the function, use the def keyword. Function name as of now giving the test is the function names. There is no opening and the closing bracket. Instead of that, we are using colon here. And after colon, whenever you hit the enter, that indentation block is gets set. And we need to write the code within that intended block only. print print. Writing this is a function. This is a function. So now this is a function we have defined. Right? Now, if I run this, the no output will get here. Right? But we already defined the function, so we can call it any times whenever we wanted. How to call the function? Test round brackets. This is a functions. If you want one more times, yes, go with that. Test. So the function is something, a block of code which can be used repeatedly whenever needed. Either you can call the function runtimes, or else if you want to call the function here only, then also you can call the function. And this is define function. Okay. The test is the function name. Test is function name. And whatever if you are written in this body, you can consider as a function body. Any number of lines of code you can write until and unless you are within these functions. So that is a function. Or if you go here, which is out of that function. We already done many trial and errors while studying if else condition, right? You got the syntax for the functions? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Def function. To call the function, you can directly go here and use a function like est. est. Perfect. I can see that the function is get called. Right. So this is very basic definitions of defining function and the calling function syntax. So now we'll go for the type of the functions. So let me share this screenshot first, and then we'll focus on the type of functions. Okay. So there are different kind of functions. Have you remember the type of functions? If you answer, how many type of function you are aware about? Yes.
Hello.
Is there any function type? How many types of functions are? Hello. Which type of function it is? The test,
User defined.
user defined. Perfect. And the print one,
Built-in function.
built-in functions. So these are the two major types, user defined and the built-in. And within that, there are two more type of functions. So let me draw the hierarchy for that. You can clear the things like how many types of functions are there. So the very first simple functions. The function can be of two types. Let me try to draw some kind of structure. It will very helpful in any programming language. This can be useful. Okay. There are two method types. If you go with the first one, so that is user defined. That means we can define the function the way we want it. And some of the built-in. built-in built-in function. So built-in function. Okay. There are two types of functions. So I'm commonly going to write. And some of the simple functions. What do you mean by simple? That means there is no parameter need to pass. Okay. Which is commonly for user defined and built-in. I can make it as a simple. That means no para. Okay. And the second part is param function. What do you mean by this? Let's understand. Suppose the function as we have defined now, which is simple words. That means you're simply def and the test name. In the bracket, there is no parameter. You simply define it like this, right? This is a simple function. There is no parameter is passed within this. Suppose if you want to write some functions like def welcome, but you need some name here as an input. So now this kind of function is considered as a parameter functions. Here I want to write where you have to display name. And that's why while calling this function, we don't pass anything. We're directly calling function because it's a simple function. But whenever there is a parameterized functions, at that time we can, while calling this function, we should pass the parameter. For example, because it need one parameter to be passed. And that's why you may have a whereabouts while calling the some of the list tuple built-in functions. We specifically need to pass the parameters. It may be the index positions, or it may be the key, or it may be value. Right? Because that are the parameterized functions. You got the two types, user defined or the built-in. Some function need a parameter or some function need no parameters. Okay. Now, apart from this, there is one more thing is there in the Pythons, and that is nothing but some function returns. See, mostly the parameterized function is return something, return value. So let us understand by the example. First, we go for the parameterized function examples. You got this function, right? A test, which is a simple function, with no param functions. This is called a function body. Now we'll go with the parameterized function. So I will define it as a param functions. So let me define the def. Well, it needs some name. So it pass the name. And it will display that name. For example, welcome colon space nm. This is now parameterized function. While calling this function, if I'm not passing any parameters, if I directly try to call this, it will give the error. It says that well missing one requirement positional arguments nm, because it is a parameterized function. It need one positional arguments, means parameters. So whenever you're having such a kind of errors, So remember that, then that function is known as a parameterized function. So let me pass a parameter with name. Now I can see that. Welcome switch. So this parameter is passed here, and the name is having holding the value as this, and that value is going to pass here. You got it? Parameter function.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Param function. Function. Pass parameter. Parameter. METR. While calling function. So parameter may be the n number of type. Let me take some other example here. As I said, some function directly print and some function return the value. So what do you mean by return value? Let's assume that I want to define one addition function. Then how you can define depth, add, you give two parameters that consider as an a comma b. So there are two options we have. Either we can directly write this, that print a plus b. This is a one way. Okay. Or else second way is def add. Let me take a triple add here. A comma b. Some function returns also return return a plus b. So there are two functions we have returns add. Some function directly printing and some function is returning the value. So now if I call this function, let me consider it as two. Suppose add 82 values, suppose 5 comma 8. It will answer as a 30 because 5 and 8 will be considered as 8. But if you try to call the function as a triple add, which is doing the same expression, but if you observe this, you got a no answer. So that doesn't mean that it is a wrong. It simply says I am returning the value. But whenever the function have a return statement, this statement must be called in the print state. That means it's returning the value. But such a function you must be called in the print statement. That means it return the value and we are printing this. Okay. So many students are doing the mistake here. So remember this. While calling the function, which is a returning, you have to print that returns in function into a print statement. Okay. Always remember this. This function return. So while calling use print. Okay, simple. You got it? The functions, the major types, parameterize, parameterize, some print directly, some returns also. So whenever the sum of the function is returning the values, so at that time you got to call that function within a print statement. You understood the functions?
Yes, sir.
No doubt, now because it's very important. If I told you to define
Yes, sir.
any kind of function, you must create the functions. Okay. Now let's give you some tasks. Now you have to runtime tell me how to define the functions. Uh, we have solved some of the mathematical expression kind of programs, right? Where we have done the area of circle and all that things, right? So now you have to define the function for the area of circle. Okay, your task is to be define a function to get the area of circle, or you can say that function for getting area, function for area of circle. Yes. How should I define the function for calculating area? Tell me. You understood the functions. How I
Yes.
can define the function? Yes. First of all, tell me what is the formula for area of circle? Pi r square.
Yes.
So 3.14 will take the value for the pi, and we need one of the radius. That is r. So how should I define the functions? Which keyword is used to define the function?
Depth.
Yes.
Def is a keyword. The function name we can define anything, so I'll write area. But this function needs something, na? It need a radius, so that's why we'll take it as a parameterized functions. Then either you can return or print. Let me use the return now. Return. What's a return value? Pi into r pi r square. So this is the function for area of circle. And while calling these functions, you have to use the print statements. For example, area of CIR CLE colon is equal to, you can go with a comma, area AREA, and some of the radius you need to pass, for example, 5. Right. Area of circle is 78.5. So this is how you can convert all the or mathematical expression into the functions. So today's your task is to be define a different functions. We have area of circle, rectangle, or the many functions. Even though we have done one of the student result system also. So means try to uh, put all the things into the functions. Functions. The advantage of this, you can call the as many time you want to function. Suppose I want to calculate the some of the different areas, so that also we can calculate. Right. Here I can simply call the area. I want to calculate the area of 8 now. That is also possible. Now I want to call the area of 55. No worries, you can call the area of 55 also. So this is what the advantage of the functions.
Yes, sir.
We have defined only once and we are calling repeatedly. Okay. This is the best part of the function. Otherwise, we every time we need to write, every time we need to call the functions. The best defined functions called multiple times. Okay. So this is what the functions. We'll practice more functions, complex functions, and then we'll go for the module kind of things. Okay, means user defined function you have seen. Then we'll go for the built-in functions, and then the module and the user defined one. Go the step by steps. Perfect. Any doubt in the function topic? All clear?
No, sir.
Okay, practice. When whichever the doubt, you
Yes.
can ask my tomorrow.
Yes.
Cool. We'll see the tomorrow.